This evening I wanted to share with you a skill that I think's very important, and not a lot of people, pay too much attention to it really. So what we're going to do this evening, sew up a pair of center seam moccasins. We're going to show you how to do that right here, step by step. There's a multitude of ways you can do that. We're going to show you one of them here tonight. And going with the theme of it too, back in the 18th century, a lot of the times, these guys had to do moccasin repair and or build moccasins on a daily basis. It was said in one of George Morgan's ledgers that he had 24 hunters going out. 8 of them actually opted to buy, the leather shoes, probably less the buckles, and they had some lacing to them. And the others went ahead and made 12 pairs of moccasins apiece. 12 pairs, that's crazy. And what they would do is they'd wear a pair one day, repair them that night, wear them again the next day, and then change sets every 3rd day. So again, we're going to show you how to make a simple center seam moccasin here tonight. So let me rearrange the camera and we'll get going. So let's talk about some of the things you're going to need. But first off, let's get back to the shoes. Here's a pair of, typical 18th century leather, straight laced, straight lasted shoe. Very common, more for the, colonial people and people in the towns. But again, according to the ledgers of George Morgan, he had 8 hunters that actually bought these to go out on the long hunts. So just wanted to show you those. Again, the typical and most prevalent footwear along the frontier would have been the center seam moccasin, the pup toe moccasin, or shoe packs depending on the weather. But the regular center seam moccasin was very, very common. So here's a pair here I did out of elk hide, and that's what we're going to get going on here tonight. So some of the things that we need to do this project, obviously we need some type of leather, and it doesn't have to be buckskin all the time, or elk or buffalo. I have half a cow hide here, so that's what we're going to use here tonight. This is just a piece from the elk leather that I had that was actually going to be used as a welt, and I didn't use that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to it. It's not really needed. I just have it to show you when the time comes. So we have our leather. We need something to sew it up with. This time we're going to be using artificial sinew. 2 of the most common ways or means of sewing their gear and moccasins and such in the 18th century was either linen thread or regular sinew, with all the deer and wild game they were getting. We obviously need a needle to go with that thread. If you were going to use linen thread, you'd go ahead and wax that thread. I just have some fixing wax here just to show you that. Again, we're going to use artificial sinew and not the linen, but you just run your linen thread through the wax, and make it easier for you to get it through your leather that way. Good pair of scissors goes a long way. I've yet to get a traditional awl, but you're going to want some type of awl. You could use a hammer and a nail, just as easy. I just have my SAK here. It's got a halfway decent awl on it. It's not the easiest thing to use, but that's what we're going to use tonight. And then if you're doing this inside, one purpose being safety, so you're not jamming this thing into your leg. You're going to want something to push down through the leather with. I just have a piece of pine board here, and keep you from digging up your floor at home as well. So we'll use the board for that. So let's adjust the camera. I'm going to lay this hide out, show you guys what it looks like. We're going to talk about some of the things that you should be looking for, where you should be cutting your pattern from off of the hide, and we'll go from there. Alright, so here's our half a cow hide. The top portion being roughly the center of this cow's back. You can see the back leg came down over here. This section would have been the belly, of course, on the front legs and the neck area up top. So plenty of room here. You could get, you know, a few pairs of moccasins out of this easy enough. I've got some other projects in mind to do, so we're going to make one set of moccasins tonight. Look for other projects in the future. You know, back in the 18th century, when the long hunters would get back to the station camp or the fort, wherever it was they were staying, like I said, they did a lot of these projects while they were there, before they went out, any repairs they needed to make, new moccasins, you know, etc. And obviously, all of that was done, if not during the day, at night, by firelight or by lantern, or both. So we're going to take our lantern here, get our beeswax candle going. Alright, so obviously this is a skills video. I can't leave you guys in the dark, so we got to turn some lights on here. So typically when you're looking at your hide for a moccasin, you'd want to use the thickest part of that hide, and where that's going to be is back, you know, back by the back haunches, up the back, all the way up, you know, to the back of the neck is going to be the thickest part of your hide. So that's where you want to get your moccasins out of, you know, and the rest you can use for other tasks that ain't gonna, you know, get a lot of abuse and wear over time. So you'd wanna, you know, get your 1 foot pattern starting here and continually go up the back. I'm gonna fold this up a little bit smaller, readjust the camera for you guys again, and actually go ahead and lay out one of my feet here and get that started and show you what that looks like. Alright guys, so we took our center of the hide and we folded it over and gave ourselves enough room to get our foot on there. This is actually folded out a little bit more than what I need. But you want to give yourself at least a couple inches in the back. That's just going to get cut right out straight for now. But you definitely want to make sure you have enough room width-wise so it fits your foot perfectly. There's different ways you can do that. You can take a string, slide it through underneath your foot, make a knot in one end and hold it to the center of your hide. Pull it up to the top, and wherever they meet, that's going to be the circumference of your foot. Then you can lay it out, pull your knot to your center seam again, and wherever it ends out here, you'll know that's going to be where you sew, and that'll be perfectly to your foot. That'll be your sew line. You want to give it an extra 1/4 inch so you can cut and have something to sew to. If that makes sense. So let me show you how to do that. I just have a piece of paracord here. You can use any type of string. In fact, if you had a measuring device for clothes in particular, you can do it that way as well. Stick it under there, and you want to measure it up right at the top of your foot where you're going to start your sewing. I can bring that up, and I'm at 10.5 inches. So now I can come down, put that tape on my center seam, fold it in half, and I actually have a bottom to this too. We only need half of that. So half of 10.5, about 5 1/4. So I could come out here, take a pencil, pen or whatever, mark 5 1/4, and I know I'm good. Now we have to do that again up here at the widest part of our foot, up by the ball. I'm at 9.5 there. So I'll come out 4 3/4. Mark that. So now I have 2 marks, one by the ball of my foot, widest part, and one right in line with the top of my foot where we're going to start our center seam sewing down. So I've got them marked out. Again, that's going to be our sew line, so we have to give it at least an extra 1/4 of an inch both directions, so we can cut that line out. Now at the top and the back, we're just going to mark what we have there. So being leather, we don't want to make them too big, because as we wear them, they're going to stretch on us anyway. Get my foot right here. I'm going to come in this little portion of my big toe here, mark that, and I'm giving it a 1/4 of an inch. Now you don't want to follow your toes perfectly. Mine are pretty rounded anyways, but that's exactly how you want to trace this out. You want to round it off. Now when you come out, you're going to come out to them marks that you made out here. So we'll go to our outside mark there, and we're good. Now all we need to do, mark the back of our heel, and then we can continue this line straight down through our other mark that we made there. Just like that. So now all we have to do is just cut that out both together. You know, one of the favorite drinks all over the frontier, even above, you know, coffee and tea. I think tea has been mentioned as probably a third, next to coffee being second, but the favorite was chocolate with some either muscovado sugar or some maple sugar. So I don't have any muscovado sugar, but I have some maple sugar and some chocolate here. So we're going to boil up some chocolate in our tin pot here, 18th century fashion, while we work on our moccasins. Alright, so I showed you guys how to lay it out. That's exactly how I laid out my first pair. But after making them and trying them on, I actually saved a pattern to them. So I'm cutting out something different than I just showed you there. I bet you'll see it. I'll give you a look when I'm done. I actually incorporated the flaps that are usually sewn on later. I've added them into this full pattern just to see how it works out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these out, and I'll show you what that looks like as soon as we get done. Alright, so here's one foot. Like I said, these are just the top flaps after the fact that hang down the side. Just like this. I've actually rounded these off after I sewed them on. I just thought they looked a little better that way. So I'll probably do the same to this. I just traced it out before I had done that. So now what you have is a good pattern. Nice moccasin. Looks to be, check the other side. When you line up all these edges, guys, if they're off a bit, like it is right here, you can just trim that up later. That's not a big deal. So I'm gonna get this other one cut out. Alright guys, so here's our two patterns. I think it's just about time to check our chocolate. Good, let that cool a little bit. Get some in the cup. You know, with that tinware, you want to fill that stuff right up with liquid. It's not meant to, you know, be half full or anything. You don't want your solder to run and stuff like that. So the trick to that is keep it wet, keep it full, and you'll be alright. So back to the moccasin. Alright guys. So back to our moccasin here. Now you can tell the difference, you know, between the outside, which was the outside of the skin where the hair was, which is here, nice and shiny, smooth, and the other side kind of like suede. And it's said that you want to wear these exactly like the animal would have, to include making sure the grain runs the same way as you're using it. So we did that. So now where to start? Again, we want to line up our outside edges. If there's any discrepancies, we can go ahead and trim that off. We look pretty good. Alright guys, so before we get to punching our holes and sewing this up, I told you about that welt a little earlier in the video, which is just a piece of that elk hide that I have. So all a welt is a spacer of sorts that fit in between your leather to make it a lot stronger when you sew it together. So look, something like that sandwiched in between. And obviously poke your holes all the way through everything there and sew that up. Again, it's not really needed. This is a thin hide anyway. This is going to be a good lightweight summer pair of Mocs. So we're not going to use that. I would give you probably a little bit of extra room there too. You know, another 1/4 inch of material there. Give you a little bit more room in the mock. But again, you don't want it loose because it's going to stretch out on you as you're wearing it. So where I like to start punching my holes and sewing this up is right at the top, which is that point where we measured right at the top of our foot. So that's where I'm going to start. There's different ways you can sew this up, different types of stitches you could use. You could actually sew this inside out and just use a whip stitch all along that seam, which is really not that strong, but it is a technique and you can do that. It's kind of an easy way. You can use a saddle stitch here, which is probably the strongest. We're going to do it in a way where it's just a running stitch at first. So we're going to sew it one way all the way down to the bottom, but then we're going to come back and hit all them spaces that we missed on the way down, which will in turn make a piece of thread go through each hole from opposite ways. So it's like, you know, tying your shoe up. That's probably one of the strongest stitches. A running stitch is by itself is probably equivalent, you know, to the whip stitch as far as strength goes. So break out the awl here and get going on this. So I'm going to punch a hole right at the top there, and I'm going to come in almost 1/4 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, 1/4 inch, somewhere thereabouts. And I'm going to do the same, twist my awl a little bit. Once you punch these holes, it looks good now, but if you go a few, by the time you come back to sew that up, they want to close up on you. So, these guys weren't in a rush back then. They didn't really measure their time in minutes, hours, or even days. They kind of measured their time by the season and what had to be done. So this is certainly not a race. You don't want to rush. You want to do it right the first time. And this leather is definitely thinner than the elk hide I used on my other pair. But that's as far as I'm going to go for now. I got 4 holes there. So I'm going to go ahead and get my needle, some sinew. And I want to grab a piece of sinew where I think's long enough to do that whole thing without having to rethread and tie knots and stuff. So I'm going to get a good piece on here. And I pull it through a little ways, 4 or 5 inches or so, and then just twist it. So instead of doubling up like I would with a regular type thread, I'm only going to use a single strand when all said and done. Pull that through most of the way. Now on this top one, I'm going to go ahead and go through that a couple times, because this is going to take most of the abuse with trying to get it on and off my foot. So we'll go ahead and shore that up pretty good. And then I'm just going to go back and forth through my holes from each side. So I come up this way and I'm going to go back down that way. And like I said, once we get all the way to the bottom, we're going to come back up and make that a saddle stitch, which will make that nice and strong. This leather is called a tobacco, is what the color is. I think it's got a pretty nice color to it. I think the sinew being almost a yellow, it's almost like a yellow and maroon combo between the two of them. So it should look pretty nice when we're done. And because it's a running stitch, it's going to bunch up on you like that, so you can just flatten it back out. You don't really want it all bunched up. And I'm at the end of my 4th hole, so I'm going to continue punching holes here. A decent awl would go a long way as well. In a pinch, this gets it done, but I definitely prefer a better one. And again, like I said, you can use a hammer and a nail for that matter. more holes there, so stitch them up. Alright guys, so we get that sewed up all the way to the bottom one way. Now we're going to start going back the other way, like I said, sewing in the holes on the opposite side that we didn't get to this time around. And again, it's not a race. And this is the first one down the bottom, so I'm going to go through that one twice as well. But yeah, it's not a race, so take your time. It'll come out a lot better. You'll be happier with it. I think you can see that. Here's our first stitch. Then going up back towards the front, there's a stitch, you know, every quarter of an inch or so. So now we're going to be catching those spaces that are missing. So I'm going to go ahead and sew a few of these up and show you guys what that looks like. Alright guys, so we went ahead and sewed it all the way up back to the top of our foot where we started now. I'm going to show you how I finished this off. I went through the top hole, but not all the way through both sides of this. I only went halfway in the middle and come up in between. That's going to allow me to tie my knot off inside and kind of hide it. You can do it on the outside just as well. This just makes it look better. So I'll catch that last thread that I came through, pull it through, and then inside that loop I'll just go through that. Couple half hitches. And then we can snip it. Alright, so that's what it looks like. The stitching now that I've gone both ways to complete the saddle stitch. Alright, so now we gotta try it on. Alright, so we're a little off, actually quite a ways off, but we're not in a bad way. We're actually short down here on the top, so we need to bring this up to the top of our foot like I showed you guys in the beginning where we measured to. So this came up short down here for some reason, so I need to bring that up to right about there and sew that up right to the top of our foot. So do some cutting here, some more sewing so we can get up to the top, and then we can start fiddling around with the back. Alright, just so you guys see where we're at and what I just did, I just continued this cut up to where the actual top of my foot is. I'm not sure what happened there, if it was the way I traced out that pattern or what, but from the last one. So we gotta punch our holes here, sew it up to that point, put it back on, check it out, and then like I said, we can start messing around with the back, and I'll show you how to get all that tied in and sewed up. We can use a different stitch for that, so that'll go a little bit quicker too. But yeah, I'll just finish this up right here with the holes, same saddle stitch that we just did all the way around, and when we're done. Alright, so we're good now all the way up to the top. We should have been from the beginning. That fits pretty good. So now the back, you want to mark right where your heel is and use that as your reference. Alright, so we just marked right here as the back of our heel, and you can see I had cuts in here from earlier. Well, this little tab is going to end up sticking out in the end. So we got to cut these lines right up to our heel mark there. And this piece flap in the back on mine is about 1 inch. That's actually going to make up the heel, because you can't just have the thing come to a point. You know, your heel is rounded, so you need to round it off somehow. So now we're going to fold these in across that line there perfectly, and we're going to find the center of that. And I know the back of our heel and the back of our leg is contoured. It kind of goes in from our heel and up to our calf. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to cut this line straight up. Alright? And it's going to make it a little bit snug at first, but that's exactly what you want, because these things, like I said, are going to stretch out on you a little bit as you use them. So I'm going to get this marked up, cut out. Alright, so again, that's what it looks like. All I did was fold these over. They were obviously longer, like this piece right here was way over here. So I just folded them in, marked center on each piece, and then I just cut straight up the pieces, both the same. So now we're going to sew this up, and again, you can use a multitude of stitches. You could go ahead and use the same saddle stitch we've done. You could use a whip stitch here. You could use a baseball stitch here as well. I think we're going to go ahead with a simple whip stitch. Keep it simple, plus it'll give it that, you know, same color with the sinew on the back side as well, so it'll match. I think it'll make it stand out a little bit more and look a little bit better. So it's as simple as punching the holes again, and then just a quick whip stitch. Give this oil chocolate a go here. And again, these guys are doing all this, you know, both by candlelight and firelight. Good stuff right there. Pretty cool. Alright guys, there's one done. Nice and sleek, lightweight. This is going to be a good summertime pair. So yeah, one done, pretty comfy. We'll knock out that other one. Alright guys, get the other one all sewed up. Like I said, a little sleek. Kind of trim these down to go lower in the back. The hide, like I said, is much thinner than the elk hide, obviously. Very reminiscent of buckskin, really, unless you get a big burly deer or something with some thicker skin, but feels pretty similar, pretty comfy. It's going to be good this summer. Alright guys, so we'll get a nice new pair of moccasins. I know it's a sewing video, not very entertaining. I tried to mix things up a little bit, give you guys some history in there, kind of keep it a little bit stimulating for you. But again, nice pair of moccasins. They're going to do real fine this summer, I'm sure. Looking forward to trying them out. So we appreciate your views, we appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next one.